The golden lights of the cafe shimmered softly against the gathering dusk, casting a warm glow over polished tabletops and flickering candles. Outside, the city hummed with the rhythm of evening. Car tires whispering against wet pavement, laughter drifting from nearby terraces, and the scent of roasted coffee thick in the air. Inside, at a corner table by the window, sat Adrian Shaw, his expression caught somewhere between patience and resignation. For the third time in 10 minutes, he checked his watch. 34 years old, a successful entrepreneur, a man who had built an empire from long hours and relentless focus. Yet somehow, in the quiet of that little cafe, he looked utterly human, utterly ordinary, and unmistakably disappointed. At this point in life, Adrian had been on enough blind dates to recognize the unmistakable feeling of being stood up. The pattern was almost routine: polite messages, promises of meeting, and then silence or excuses. Tonight felt like another one for the collection. His business partner, Michael, had arranged this particular meeting, insisting that Adrian needed to get out of the office and actually live. According to Michael, the woman, Isabel was kind, genuine, and the perfect balance to Adrian's work-obsessed lifestyle. Adrian had agreed, mostly out of exhaustion. Now, 20 minutes past the appointed time, the chair across from him sat empty. He sighed, lifting his glass of water and staring out at the darkening skyline. Maybe it was time to admit defeat, settle the bill, and go back to the world he understood, the one of contracts and deadlines. But just as he raised a hand to call the waiter, movement caught his eye. A small figure, no taller than the edge of the table, was weaving her way through the crowded restaurant. A little girl, perhaps 3 or 4 years old, with soft blonde curls tied back by a pink ribbon. Her pink dress fluttered around her knees as she walked with determined purpose, dodging chairs and legs with the focus of someone on a mission. She stopped right beside his table, looking up at him with large, serious blue eyes. "Excuse me," she said, her voice bright and polite. "Are you Mr. Adrian?" Adrian blinked in surprise. "I am. And who might you be?" "I'm Lily," she replied, as though that explained everything. "My mommy sent me to tell you she's sorry she's late. She's parking the car, and she'll be here in just a minute. She said tell you she's really, really sorry, and she hopes you didn't leave." Adrian's annoyance dissolved instantly. Amusement tugged at his mouth as he leaned back in his chair. "Your mommy sent you in here alone to find me?" Lily nodded matter-of-factly. "She showed me your picture on her phone, so I'd know what you look like. She said you'd be sitting by the window with a candle. And here you are." She looked incredibly proud of her successful mission, standing straight like a tiny detective reporting a solved case. "Well, you found me," Adrian said, smiling warmly. "Would you like to sit down while we wait for your mommy?" With careful concentration, Lily climbed into the chair across from him, her little legs swinging in the air. Adrian resisted the urge to help her. She clearly wanted to do it herself. Once seated, she folded her hands on the table and regarded him seriously. "Mommy says I'm not supposed to talk to strangers," Lily said. "But she said you're not a stranger. You're her friend, Mr. Adrian. So it's okay." "That's very wise of your mommy," Adrian replied, charmed. "And she's right. If she sent you to find me, I guess I'm not a stranger." Lily tilted her head. "Are you going to marry my mommy?" Adrian nearly choked on the sip of water he had just taken. "I'm sorry, what?" Lily repeated with perfect seriousness. "Are you going to marry my mommy?" He tried not to laugh, but her calm expression made it impossible. "That's quite the question." She shrugged. "Mrs. Henderson next door says Mommy needs to find a husband. Mommy said she's trying, but it's hard with a little girl, because some men don't like kids. Do you like kids?" Before Adrian could find a diplomatic answer, a woman rushed toward their table, breathless and flushed. She had the same blonde hair as Lily, only longer, and eyes full of embarrassment. "Lily, I told you to wait by the door, not to go looking for him," she said, exasperated. Adrian stood automatically. The woman, Isabel he assumed, turned to him, cheeks red. "I am so sorry," she said quickly. "I'm Isabel, and this is my daughter Lily, who apparently doesn't follow instructions very well. I told her to wait while I found you, but she's very independent. I found him, Mommy, Lily said proudly. And I told him you were sorry you were late. Yes, you did, sweetheart, Isabel said, sighing but smiling despite herself. And that was very helpful. But you still shouldn't have come over alone. She turned back to Adrian. Really, I apologize. The parking was a nightmare, and I couldn't figure out the parking meter. And by the time I got inside, Lily had already taken matters into her own hands. It's fine, Adrian said, and realized he meant it. Lily was perfectly polite. She delivered your message beautifully. Please sit. Isabel hesitated, then sat down, pulling Lily's chair closer beside her. I should have told you I have a daughter before we agreed to meet, she said quietly. That was wrong of me. I'll understand if you'd rather not stay. Adrian frowned. Why would I leave? Because most men do, she admitted softly, once they find out about Lily. I've learned to be upfront about it now. But your partner was so enthusiastic about setting us up, and I just wanted one evening where I wasn't judged for being a single mother before anyone even met me. Adrian looked at Lily, who was now doodling on a napkin with a crayon she'd pulled from her little purse, and then at Isabel, whose expression held the quiet readiness of someone used to rejection. He thought about how this little girl had confidently navigated a crowded restaurant to find him, about her politeness and poise, and what that said about her mother. I think, he said finally, anyone who judges you for being a mother is missing out on something amazing. Lily's incredible, and that's because of you. Isabel blinked rapidly, her eyes glistening. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me in a very long time. They ordered dinner, and what could have been painfully awkward turned into something warm, easy, and unexpectedly wonderful. Lily chattered happily about her daycare friends and favorite cartoons, sometimes stopping mid-story to ask Adrian deeply personal questions that made both adults laugh. As the evening went on, Isabel relaxed, realizing Adrian wasn't just being polite, he was genuinely enjoying himself. He asked about Lily's favorite shows, about Isabel's job as a teacher, about what she wanted for her future. Later, as dessert arrived and Lily became absorbed in coloring on the children's menu, Adrian smiled and said, Lily asked me earlier if I was going to marry you. Isabel froze mid-bite, her face turning crimson. Oh no, I'm so sorry. She heard my neighbor say something, and now she thinks every man I meet is a potential husband. It's fine, Adrian said with an amused smile. Honestly, it made me think. About what? Isabel asked softly. About life, he said. I've spent 10 years building a company, chasing success, but every night I go home to an empty apartment. Lately, I've been wondering what the point of all that is. He looked at her, then at Lily, whose small humming filled the space between them. Watching you two tonight, he continued, made me realize that the best things in life aren't things at all. They're people, connections, moments like this. Isabel's eyes softened. Are you saying you'd like to see us again? I'm saying I'd like to try, Adrian said, his voice steady but earnest. If you'll let me, I don't have experience with kids. I work too much, and I'll probably make 1,000 mistakes, but I'd like the chance to know you both better. For the first time that evening, Isabel smiled without hesitation. And just like that, something shifted, quietly, beautifully, inevitably. From that night on, Adrian's life began to take on a warmth and rhythm he hadn't known he was missing. The man who used to spend late nights hunched over spreadsheets and quarterly reports now found himself sitting cross-legged on a carpet, surrounded by stuffed animals and dolls, negotiating bedtime stories and pretend tea parties. He laughed more, worked less, and discovered that some meetings, the ones held in blanket forts, were far more meaningful than any boardroom discussion. Isabel, who had once carried the quiet weight of single motherhood, found her days filled with laughter and stability again. Adrian became her anchor, not because he was perfect, but because he was present. He listened. He tried. When Lily was sick, he stayed up through the night holding her hand, even when he didn't know what to do. When Isabel came home exhausted from her job, he made sure dinner was ready, even if it was just burnt pasta and store-bought sauce. The effort mattered more than the outcome. Lily, ever the bright spark between them, became the thread that tied their growing bond tighter. She declared herself the relationship manager, taking her job seriously. She would announce at dinner, "Mommy, Mr. Adrian did the dishes without being asked. That's good husband behavior." Other days, she'd frown and say, "Mr. Adrian forgot to read me my bedtime story. Needs improvement." Isabel would try not to laugh, and Adrian would salute and promise to do better next time. 6 months into their relationship, Adrian surprised them both by showing up at Lily's daycare recital. He sat in the front row, clapping the loudest, tears glistening in his eyes as Lily stood on stage, singing slightly off-key but with full-hearted enthusiasm. After performance, Lily ran straight into his arms, yelling, "Did I do good, Mr. Adrian?" He hugged her tightly and whispered, "You were perfect." It was in moments like those that Isabel realized just how deeply Adrian had integrated into their lives. He wasn't just a visitor anymore. He was home. He had learned how to braid Lily's hair, albeit unevenly, how to make pancakes that almost matched Isabel's, and how to calm a tired child's tantrum with humor instead of frustration. A year passed, and with it came changes both big and small. Adrian moved out of his sleek apartment in the city and into Isabel's cozy townhouse, trading glass walls for family photos and minimalist furniture for colorful clutter. His once immaculate kitchen counters now held finger-painted art and toy tea sets. And strangely, he found peace in the chaos. Then came that unforgettable evening, one that began like any other, but ended changing their lives forever. Adrian had arranged to meet Isabel and Lily at the same cafe where they had met the year before. The place was softly lit, familiar, and filled with the gentle hum of conversation. As they arrived, Lily immediately spotted the window seat and squealed, "It's our table." Adrian smiled. "That's right, the very first one." He guided them to sit, his heart pounding harder than it had in years. After dessert, Adrian took a deep breath, pushed his chair back, and knelt beside Lily. The whole cafe seemed to fade into silence. "Lily," he began softly, "I need to ask you something important." Isabel blinked in surprise, her hand instinctively covering her mouth. Lily tilted her head curiously. "What is it, Mr. Adrian?" He smiled, nervous but sincere. "I want to ask your mommy to marry me. But if I do, that means I'd be your family too. Would that be okay with you?" Lily's eyes grew wide. She thought about it, her little brow furrowed in deep consideration. Then, with utmost seriousness, she asked, "Would you be my daddy?" Adrian's throat tightened. "If you'd like me to be," he said. "I know you had a daddy before, and I'm not trying to replace him. But I love your mommy, and I love you, and I'd be honored to be your family." A long pause. Then Lily grinned. "Okay, but you have to get better at playing dolls. And you have to learn how to make my mommy's special pancakes." Adrian laughed, a tear escaping down his cheek. "Deal." He turned to Isabel. "Your daughter has given me permission. Now I need to ask you." He reached for Isabel's hand. "You and Lily have taught me what truly matters in life. Will you marry me?" Isabel's tears spilled freely. She nodded, unable to speak, her heart overflowing. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes. The cafe erupted in applause as Lily jumped up and shouted, "Mr. Adrian is going to be my daddy now. Everyone be happy." Laughter rippled through the room. 6 months later, they stood together at their wedding. A small ceremony filled with friends, laughter, and the scent of wildflowers. Lily was a flower girl, scattering petals down the aisle with exaggerated care, stopping occasionally to whisper to guests, "This is all because of me, you know. I found Mr. Adrian first." During the reception, Isabel raised her glass to give a toast. Her voice trembled slightly as she began, "I was so nervous the day I met Adrian that I asked Lily to wait by the door while I looked for him. But Lily, being Lily, decided she could handle things herself. She marched right up to him, delivered my message, and in doing so, showed him exactly who we were, a package deal, a team, a family." She turned to Adrian, her eyes glowing with love. "And instead of running away, you stayed. You saw that Lily wasn't a complication. She was a gift. You loved us both, fully and without hesitation. Thank you for showing me that the best things in life don't always come as we plan. Sometimes they arrive in the form of a 3-year-old with a pink ribbon who doesn't follow instructions." The room filled with laughter and happy tears. Adrian took her hand. kissed it gently, and said, "You two were the best surprise of my life." From that day forward, their home was filled with warmth and chaos. Pancakes on Sundays, bedtime giggles, the sound of Lily's tiny footsteps in the hallway at dawn. And every night, before turning out the lights, Adrian would whisper to Isabel, "Thank you for giving me my family." Years later, when Lily grew older, she would look back on that story and proudly tell her friends, "My mom and daddy met because I walked up to them first. I started our whole family." And she wasn't wrong. Because sometimes the greatest love stories don't begin with grand gestures or perfect timing. They start with a determined little girl, a late mother, and a man waiting in a cafe, unaware that his entire world is about to change forever. And that's the beauty of life. That love, in all its unpredictable, imperfect, breathtaking glory, often arrives disguised as a small, curious child with a message to deliver. If this story warmed your heart, remember, love rarely arrives neatly packaged. Sometimes it's loud, messy, and unexpected, but always worth it. Like, share and tell your own story about the moments, the people, and the tiny acts of courage that change your world. Because love, real love, is never just found. It's built,